How's it going, Jets fans? My name is Alex, and my co-host here, Ryan Moran. Today, I want to take a look at an unknown for this Jets team. Of course, you kind of look at the roster and you get a good idea of who's going to stand out, who's going to be the playmakers, who Robert Saleh is expecting to take those big leaps forward. We've talked about a myriad of players up to this point as training camp quickly approaches in a couple of weeks here. Really excited for that because we get a firsthand look at some of these guys, what they're going to offer this team. Of course, you're just unraveling these position battles. We'll see what happens at left tackle, but there is one kind of unknown, and Ryan's going to break down exactly what he's most concerned about, specifically on the defensive side of the football. Something the Jets dealt with last year that was a big issue for them, and maybe looking to cover up that issue, take a step forward with a little bit more experience, continuity, and chemistry on the defensive side. Ryan, before we dive into it, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well, Alex. I appreciate it as always. And, it was obviously a very fun offseason for the New York Jets. You look at going into the offseason, the abundance of premium resources between free agency dollars to spend and obviously making 4 top 36 picks. I mean, you knew that they were going to be able to add a ton of big time players, and they definitely did. But as we've obviously spoken on in recent episodes, Joe Douglas fully committed to this rebuild just 2 years ago. They were the youngest roster in the NFL last year and won 4 games. It was going to be impossible to address every single need this offseason as well as they did. And that main need right now for the Jets, and really just the concern, I think, from the fan base, is the run defense overall. Obviously, you lose Foley Fatukasi, who from 2019 to last year was really, really good stopping the run and the best contributor the Jets had in that regard. And they really did nothing to replace him. I mean, all they really did was re-sign Nathan Shepard. And then at the linebacker position next to CJ Mosley, I think a lot of people wanted a linebacker either signed or drafted. And that was one of the few positions, like I said, they addressed corner, they addressed receiver, tight end, but they just couldn't get a linebacker at the end of the day. And I think, stopping the run up the middle, obviously the Jets were bottom 5 last year, allowed nearly 140 yards on the ground a game. It was just a glaring weakness that teams knew how to attack. I mean, the Patriots, the Colts, so many of those games, especially there in the middle of the season where they really couldn't stop anything. And, obviously we got to really go over who some of these players are who can, potentially not necessarily eliminate this need, but just mitigate it and make it, to a point where teams just know that they can't attack it every week.
Yeah, look, I mean, the Jets defense has a lot to improve upon. There's only one way to go when it's up. Last year, they didn't have Carl Lawson. You don't have Jermaine Johnson. CJ Mosley's coming off a big injury, not playing in 2020. So what do you expect? You know what I mean? Of course, you look at the secondary. You got Brandon Eccles. You got Huff, or Love. There's so many young guys on this roster last season. You can't really expect them to step up and have a big year. Now, Quincy Williams, of course, Quinton Williams' brother, really cool chemistry there, obviously. But Quincy Williams is a guy that, we spoke about before the episode started as maybe the starting linebacker alongside CJ Mosley, a guy who's going to step up and hopefully be that run stopper. While CJ Mosley is the leader, the Mike linebacker, he can draw back into coverage. He can serve a multitude of different roles. Quincy Williams needs to be the guy who's consistent in stopping the run and not missing a lot of tackles. Now, last season, he missed 12% of his tackles, which is really bad. 14 missed tackles. He missed 3 against the Philadelphia Eagles in Week 13, which is really bad. He missed 2 against Tennessee in Week 4, 3 against Miami, 2 against Houston, 5 against Tampa Bay in Week 17, and 3 against Buffalo. Those are simply numbers that have to be alleviated. He cannot have this much inconsistency. He had one missed tackle against Buffalo. But he had a string of games from Week 11 to Week 15 where he had a missed tackle every single week. So that needs to be alleviated from Quincy Williams. Now, he did have 110 combined tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, 3 forced fumbles, which is a really good number there. I do want to point at that one specifically. Not like linebackers being able to force fumbles is a huge benefit. Quincy Williams had 3 last year. So that's something as a big positive that Quincy's bringing to the game. Now, if he can be a little bit more consistent with his fundamentals, be a little bit more consistent when it comes to missing tackles, maybe that improved defensive line is going to help him just clean up at the second level, right? Last year you got John Franklin Myers. You have a couple guys coming in and out of that edge rusher spot. But at the end of the day, Quincy Williams now with Carl Lawson, you got Jermaine Johnson, who's kind of ready to help as a defensive presence right now in the run category, specifically run support. It'll be a lot easier for Quincy Williams to get to that second level and just clean up tackles. They'll already be going to be going down instead of maybe breaking through at full speed and bouncing off Quincy. It might be a little bit easier for him to tackle right now with runners just being hit so frequently at the line of scrimmage with better defensive edge setters. How do you see Quincy Williams' role expanding in this upcoming year? And do you think he's going to kind of take that step forward to becoming that legitimate run stopper the Jets kind of need to mitigate those statistics you mentioned before?
For sure. So I think Quincy is really one of the more fascinating players to where obviously some of the highs are really good, and you spoke on that, but there's just so much inconsistency still to his game, and that's to be expected. Like, he's young, he's raw. He battled injuries and didn't really play a ton his first 2 or 3 years it was with the Jaguars, and then obviously the Jets claimed him through waivers shortly before the start of last year, and the Jared Davis injury, the Jamie and Sherwood injury, so many things early on. I mean, he was really getting a ton of playing time, and he was with the team just a couple of weeks, so you think just from a mental standpoint, he'd be further along from a confidence perspective and just the comfortability within the scheme, which CJ Mosley has spoken on as well. So you hope in that regard that, and he did spend this offseason with TJ as well. So you think that just his knowledge of the scheme in general would be further along now. The athletic ability and the speed are undoubtedly there with Quincy. I mean, this is a guy with a ton of range. He can cover ground, run in pass game, get sideline to sideline in the backfield. It's just like you said, consistency tackling, because when he's on, like, he can really make his presence felt. He's physical, he's tough, but he's just got to really wrap up consistently. And if so, the talent is undoubtedly there. I mean, the Jets have spoken highly on him. I think you really give him a vote of confidence. You look at the way we all felt like a linebacker should have been added in the offseason, and there were opportunities in free agency in the draft, and they really didn't add anyone. It was just really DQ Thomas, who was an undrafted free agent, and Marcel Harris, who they signed in April. So I definitely think they're giving him as well as Jamie and Sherwood, another guy who, primarily can help against the run. You look at his skill set. He's a big, physical, tough player, not the greatest athlete in the world, which is why ideally I think he's someone you want just reading and reacting against the run. So I think if it's just Quincy or if it's a collective unit, that they got to just find a way to be better against the run.
Yeah, so let's take a look at Jamie and Sherwood and Hamza Nasruddin for a second. So Sherwood last year played 139 total snaps, a very small sample size, but did play 5 games, and made a pretty decent impact. He was a good run defender, as most would kind of see by his grades. Had himself a couple tackles, missed a couple tackles, mainly that last game against New England before he was taken out. He missed 2 tackles, but before that was pretty solid at 3 stops against Atlanta in week 5. Overall, I'm pretty impressed by the minimal sample size he had, but how much production he had during that as a 5th-round pick last year from Auburn. 6'2", 220 pounds. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's got the thumper attitude and that aggressiveness to make an impact in the running defense. So, what do you think the chances are that Jamie and Sherwood can steal that starting spot away from Quincy Williams? Do you think that Quincy's kind of got it locked up?
It's interesting. I do think Quincy has the upper hand, and I think he ultimately will be the starter, but the Jets have spoken highly just on Sherwood's intelligence, like how sharp he is mentally and learning things. Obviously another thing with him and Nasruddin, I mean, they were both safeties in college making that transition last year. So similar to how Quincy was acquired late, last summer, shortly before the start of the season. I mean, these guys themselves mentally, had a hurdle to overcome changing position. So you hope that all these guys are further along. And like you said, obviously Sherwood just has that presence about him and that physicality in the box to where he can help against the run. And I don't know if it's fully taking the job from Quincy, but I do think there's a way for him to definitely carve out a specific type of role for himself in this defense.
Yeah. I wonder how the improved secondary impacts these linebackers too, right? Like, you think about Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, taking away those receivers on the outside, who, by the way, are very much included in the blocking scheme for a lot of teams. When you're running the football, you need those wide receivers to be blocking. Having better corners out there is going to directly correlate to the linebackers as well. It all kind of just flows into the same thing. And then you have the safety position that are going to come down. Those safeties come down and help in the running game as well. You got, Ashton Davis. Then you got Jordan Whitehead, obviously going to be starting there. It's going to be fun to watch. This team definitely seems to be improved. There's a couple of weak spots, but the weak spots are mainly just guys that aren't proven yet. There are a lot of just young guys with talent and upside. And when you look at Quincy Williams, he's been in the league, 3 years, spent his first 2 seasons in Jacksonville, was pretty bad altogether in terms of just overall grades. He wasn't his grades weren't great last year, but he missed a lot of tackles his first 2 seasons, only played 89 snaps in 2020, 494 in 2019, then doubled it in 2021 to 881 total snaps. But his grades got a little bit better. I think having having the best version of CJ Mosley next to him is going to help him a lot, and just simplifying the game, right? Like, don't ask him to do too much. Just be like, yo, you are the run stopper. You are the guy who gets to the second level, plugs those gaps, get those tackles up. 110 tackles is not easy. Even if your only job is to play run defense and to be that main guy, 110 tackles is no joke. Like, you look at Blake Martinez for the Giants, for example. Every year he's getting 150 tackles, right? 150 combined tackles. When you have CJ Mosley next to you and you're still getting 110 tackles combined, that's pretty damn impressive. So I am curious to see what your guys' thoughts are in the comment section about Quincy Williams. Who do you guys think will be that second linebacker next to CJ Mosley? Maybe Jamie and Sherwood. Maybe you guys think Nasruddin will steal a job, or Quincy is kind of cemented. Love to hear your thoughts as always. Obviously, kind of the one unknown up to this point, but we think there's a lot of upside there based on the improvements the Jets made across the board, and kind of just playing into this bigger idea and bigger achievement that they're eyeing to kind of establish with just improved quality across the board. And the drafting kind of attests to that. And obviously the better edge setters and the run defenders on the line of scrimmage are going to play a big impact on the linebacker success as well. But if you enjoyed this video, my friends, make sure to like and subscribe as always. Much love, building the community. Really appreciate everything you guys have to offer us in the comments and everything. Means a lot to us. So please continue to participate. Love to have some good conversation down there, and it's always fun. So as I said before, make sure to like and subscribe. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.